Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of The Daily Prompt. This is Q&A Wednesday, where we take a look at some of the questions that people have posed on the YouTube comments section, or sent in via email, or sent in over a direct message through Instagram or Twitter. If you have not yet subscribed and clicked the bell to make sure that you received notifications that a new video has come out. If you have not followed us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, where you can send us a direct message, please do so. You can do so at any point now through this episode, completely missing all the point of all these answers that I'm going to give you. Or you can wait until the episode is done and then do it then. And focus in on what ultimately today is going to be about. The questions that we've sort of pulled for today tend to be about producers and what producers are looking for, what producers are, what they do, that kind of thing. So without further ado, let's jump into the questions for today. Fernando Zepeda asks, what is the difference between a producer and an executive producer, number one? And number two, why are there a lot of producers in the credits? Well, this is actually a pretty good question. Ultimately, an executive producer is essentially the person who either brings the money to the project or somehow arranges for the money to be brought to the project. It's think of the executive producer often as sort of the financier or the person that arranges the money side of things, generally speaking. The titles are not always 100% specific, so it's not like there's some dictionary definition of each title. This is just generally how they're usually used. So the executive producer brings the money. The producer, generally speaking, is the person who then takes that money and turns that money into an actual film at the end. So the producer is the person who's trying to coordinate all the elements of the story. They're trying to find projects, find a screenplay, find the writer, get the right writer and the right writer's script with the right director, and get the right actors on board. Basically, what's known as packaging the project. Often this will happen before the money happens. So a producer's doing this a lot on their own dime, speculatively. Similarly, how you would be speculatively writing a screenplay. Producers are often trying to speculatively package projects or get the different disparate elements and find a project that would be suitable for all those elements. But then once the producer finds and gets that, puts that package all together, gets the money for that, then their responsibility is to make sure that the money goes far enough, because you don't want to obviously spend all the money when you're only halfway through the film, and then you're kind of screwed because you've got a very angry investor who says, where's my movie? Well, we only made half of it. Where's the money then? Well, it's already gone because we made half of a movie. You know, the producer's job is to see it all the way through to the end, to make sure that the money goes far enough. So the producer tends to focus on things like making sure that the director doesn't get sort of too crazy with their budgetary demands and keeps it all sort of reined in so that we make sure that the money goes far enough at the end of the day. But then at the end, also, once you have a film, the producer is usually the one that's kind of responsible for making sure that finds a sales avenue, that it recoups its money somehow to then pay back the initial investor. So often a producer is with a project long before it even starts, and then long after it actually ends, to make sure that the money's actually coming in to keep that chain going. You want to please the investor so that the investor will invest in the next project. So it really is this big job. Now, why are there a lot of producers in the credits? Is because the producer credit is because there aren't these dictionary definitions where you have to meet these criteria to be considered a producer. I mean, you do if you're part of the producers guild, but for generally speaking, and especially the low and no budget realms and the non-union affiliated projects, ultimately the producer is often a credit that is given away to sort of acquire things or for vanity reasons. So often, for example, you might have first of all, if a production is big enough or a production is complex enough, or there's a producer who's really good at this part of the production, but not so good at that other part of the production, you may have more than one producer who handles different things on the production. So then you would have multiple producers on that. Sometimes you'll have a film where, let's say, you need a specific resource, a special location, a big museum or something that is not open to the public, or that kind of a thing, and that's where your movie is going to be set, in a big portion of your production takes place there. The person who gets that makes that happen for you, in order to make that happen, they might be sort of wanting or negotiating a producer credit for it, because that's going to help them in their aspirations to be a producer. So often the producer credit will go to people who have brought in or negotiated certain resources for the project. And it does perhaps dilute what a producer is, what a producer means in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes they'll give co-producer credit. The co-producers are usually people who've brought some element or some resource, maybe someone who has access to a big name actor. And without this person, you're not going to get to that big name actor. So that person's going to negotiate for themselves a co-producer credit or an associate producer credit, these kinds of things. Generally, when I'm talking about teaching from the producer's perspective, I'm not a deal-making producer. There's a lot of producers out there who are producers in the sense that they're going to try to find projects, they're going to try to package projects, and then they're going to just sort of offload it. They're not going to actually make the film. They're just going to do the deals, or they're going to get the writer in with the meeting with the big agent who's then going to package the deal. That kind of producer is, it's a legitimate role within the industry. But what I talk about from, teaching from the producer's perspective, I'm teaching from the perspective of the person who's actually going out to try to make the project, the physical hands-on producer. When I look at a screenplay, when I sort of assess a screenplay as being viable or not, I'm looking at it from the logistics of, is this ready to go out and make right now? Are we ready to go out and get to package the project? Do we think there's actually a market for this project? Is this something that we could actually make? And if not, how far away from that is it? And if it's sufficiently far enough, we're going to have to pour money and time and energy into redeveloping it or refining it and getting it to that point. It's no longer a viable project from the producer's perspective. That's the producer's perspective I'm talking about. That's the kind of producer that I am or am intending to be. My role would probably be all aspects of that if this independent film studio gets built. But ultimately, hopefully that gives you some sense of what the producer's role is and the kinds of things that they do and why there are so many of them on some projects. Next question comes to us from, I want to say Angelus Noah. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Angelus says, I do have a problem. What motivates you, Jeff? Any advice for a failed person to find his or her motivational pen? So I answered this question on YouTube, and I'm probably going to be much more succinct on YouTube. So if you want to sort of go into the comment section and find that question, I'll put a little thing up of what episode that was on. So my background is, ever since I was a little tiny wee tot, a little kid, 5, 8 years old, that kind of thing, I was always dreaming of being a part of the film industry. I would watch TV shows and I would imagine that I was the son of the main character or the long lost cousin of the other character. I imagined roles for myself, and I sort of imagined this acting career kind of a thing. When I was 12, I got into acting. I decided to start pursuing it and got myself an agent and, got into all sorts of TV commercials and movies and TVs and all that kind of stuff. And really fell in love with the production process along the way. And that's how I sort of got into all this kind of stuff. But when I was pursuing the acting thing, I was doing acting classes, one of the things that I found along the way was that to really act well, you have to fully inhabit the character. You have to immerse into their perspective and their way of seeing the world. And one of the things you notice when you start doing acting work and understanding characters is you really start to see that characters see the world in vastly different ways than I would see the world. And it's not until I immerse into their point of view and into their worldview that I could really start to see the world differently to how I would naturally see it. And I think because I really fell in love with the acting thing and I really fell in love with immersing into characters and performing and all that kind of thing, I really fell in love with this idea of seeing the world through these different windows. And it ultimately extended to my life in general. And I have this passion for traveling and for, meeting people from different cultures and different ethnicities and different points of view and different walks of life. And because, in part, if you look at it from an actor's perspective, every single one of them has a different window on the world and a different perspective. And they're going to see things that I will never see or I will never know. And it necessarily makes me realize that my window on the world is automatically skewed. It's distorted. It's biased. It's what I see. And so for me to think the world is fill in the blank, this or that, or I believe this or I believe that. Well, yeah, but that's my point of view. And what I find most interesting about the world is that we all have a different vantage point on it. For me to understand the world in which I live, the life that I could lead that would make me happy, I have to understand the world in which I live. If I have this distorted view and I keep trying to do something and I don't succeed at doing that, maybe it's because my view is distorted and I need some outside opinions and voices and ideas. And so one of the things I love about traveling and going to other cultures and meeting other people is learning their stories and learning their points of view. Sometimes you'll learn something from the other side of the planet, people that are nothing like you and that didn't grow up anything like the world in which you grew up. They may have this view of the world, which once you understand their perspective and you really immerse into their view of the world, it changes how you see your own world. It changes how you perceive and interact with the world. To me, that's inherently fascinating. To me, if we talk about like what motivates me, I believe that those stories are important. I believe that it's essential for us to understand other points of view, other perspectives, people with different skin color, people with different height and age and weight and gender and working life and family life and culture and religion and politics and all of it. Like, I think it's essential to understand everyone else's point of view. And so what I found along the way is because I grew up in Hollywood and Los Angeles, and because I started acting when I was so young, and because I've been around the film industry all my life, this is just, it's natural to me. It's not something weird or scary or hard or difficult or inaccessible or impossible or, you know, all these things that when I got to Australia, I found that, you know, people just did not even believe that it was a real thing to make money making movies or to be in the film industry, which was baffling to my mind because, yeah, of course it's possible. Of course you can do it. I did it. That was my primary income for the first 10 years of my adulthood. So clearly it can be done. But people don't know that. People don't think that. And similarly with storytelling, if you don't know how to tell a story, if you've never been around anyone who tells a story, if you don't know the dynamics of it, or you don't know the realities of the business side of it, then yeah, it can seem impossible and it can seem like something that you could never do. And so you may never actually do it. You may never actually put in the time or the energy to learn how to do it. And to me, that is tragic, really, if that's what you want to do, if that's what your passion is, because you have, like I say, those windows on the world that are unique to you and that are we need to know them. Like someone else on the planet needs to know your story, needs not necessarily your life story, but the story that you have in your imagination, or the story that could be developed out of that idea that's in your imagination. Somebody in the world that may change their whole life. That may change their whole perspective. And it's so necessary, I think. I don't think, because I grew up in it, because it's a part of my past and my history, I don't see Hollywood or the film industry or making movies or making television or any of this stuff as this mysterious thing that, whoa, you know, nobody can like, it's just a thing we do. Like, we can grab a camera, we go out, we shoot some actors talking, we cut it together, we make music on it, we tell a story. How well we tell our story, how effectively that engages with the audience is really determined by our skill level, and have we developed the tools to actually do that, and are writers willing to go all the way and actually develop that to a pro level to be able to write it at a level that's that effective. That's what's going to take your stories and make it an actual contribution to the world. And I believe it's extremely important. I believe it's extremely important, not just like, hey, cool that we could do this, but like, I think it's important that as many people as possible find their ideas and develop their talents and tell their stories so that we can expand our view of of the world. So I can understand my world better by understanding your point of view from the other side of the world, right? Like, that's what motivates me. So the second part of this question is, any advice for a failed person to find his or her motivational pen? I don't necessarily know how to give you the motivation. What we do in Fast Screenplay setup step 1 is we have you identify what your goal is. What are you reaching for? And then I have this PDF called How to Guarantee Completion of Your Production Ready Project, and basically goes through step by step and helps you figure out not only what your goal is, but why is it essential for you to achieve it right now? Because that is where your motivational pen is going to come from. Like, why is it essential for me to do this right now? It's because I firmly believe we live in a moment in time where the opportunity is literally infinite. And I believe we are not tapping into that opportunity. We're this polarized society. What we need is not to push each other away. What we need is to hear each other's stories, which means we need to develop stories, which means we all need to enhance our talents and our abilities to be able to tell those stories effectively so they can land with our audience in a way that's not going to push them away, but that bring them together. I believe that my why right now is that the world needs it, that this is how we're going to survive. This is how we're going to thrive into the future. It's a big thing. I know and maybe I'm deluded in thinking this or naive or Pollyanna, whatever, but that's where my motivation comes from. If this idea that this part of this question of, do you have any advice for a failed person? There is no failure. You cannot fail. It's not possible to fail. It literally is not possible to fail. Anything that you try that doesn't succeed, it's not a failure. That's an experience. And that experience is showing you how to get to the next level. Experience shows us how to get to the next level. That is a key idea and a key insight and a foundational idea of not only my philosophy, but of the system that I built. You can't fail going through Fast Screenplay. It's not possible. If you go and you write something that doesn't land the way you want it to land, well, then you've recorded your experience throughout the process. So you simply look back and figure out, why didn't this land the way that I wanted it to land? What can I do then to tweak it, to make it more effective, to make sure the next one does land the way that I want it to land? That's not a failure. That's an experience. That's not a writer who wants to write the great American novel and sits down and tries to write a novel and sends it out, and 100 different publishing companies say, no, that's not a failure. That's an experience. You've written your first novel. You've gone to the trouble to do it. Now figure out why this isn't landing the way that you want it to land. Why is this not grabbing people's interest? What can you do to then adjust and tweak and change? Either modify that project or you use and apply that to the next project. So to me, they're intertwined. So it's the reason I like this question is because to me, what motivates me, what drives me, my deep, passionate why and why now is interwoven with this notion that you can't fail, that it is all experience. If someone's born on the other side of the planet, they live a completely different life to me. I don't understand their culture. I don't understand the way they were raised, their family dynamics, their educational background, their monetary situation, what it's like to be their gender or their height or their skin color, whatever it is. Like, that to me, like, there's nothing they could do that would fail. They can't, there's no failure involved in having a different life experience than mine. Would they be able to do what I've done and build what I've built? Probably not, but not because they are incapable of it, but because they don't have that journey. They don't have that experience. So it literally is the experience that we have, that we go on. That experience is what our life is. And so you can't judge yourself. You will never find the motivational pen by identifying your failures and labeling them as such. You will find that by asking yourself, why do I want this? And why must I reach for this now? Why is it important to do it right now? And if you don't have that and you can't find that, chances are you're not digging deep enough to really understand the underlying motivations of it all. To get an Academy Award, or to win $1 million, or even just to get enough money to pay rent, or to impress your friends or your father, or like those are not big enough reasons why. And if those are the things that are currently serving as your motivation, they're going to fizzle. You need to find a deeper motivation. So, you know, I'm always going to suggest that people sign up for the 10-day free start. Do that free PDF. It's free. It's free. Do how to guarantee production of your how to guarantee completion of your production ready screenplay. It's part of setup step 1. You don't even have to open the next 10 steps. You don't have to do any further action than just go get that and do that. It will help you find not just your why, but why now. And that is going to change absolutely everything. That motivation is going to help you realize what you're actually going for, and what you're going for is what you're going for is going to help you identify what drives you, right? So I hope that made sense. I might have gone off on a little bit of a tangent, but hopefully we've answered the question. If not, ask more questions in the comments below. Let's get to the next question. Nikki Oldacre says, where does a writer find a list of the kinds of spec scripts producers are seeking? How to contact them without an agent? Should I use an entertainment attorney instead? Here's the thing, Nikki. You can't. That list doesn't exist. If we could find a list of the kinds of spec screenplays producers are looking for, we would have the spec screenplays we're looking for. One of the great misunderstandings and misconceptions, and hopefully understanding the earlier question about what producers do and why there are so many producers, every producer is different. What we're looking for is determined by our style and our sensibility and what we're passionate about and what motivates us and why we're in this game and why we would possibly devote the next 3 to 5 years to a project, finding the money and packaging it all, making sure the money goes far enough and end up with a script and stick around with it long enough to make sure that you sell it and make enough money to pay back the investor. Like the kinds of spec scripts I might be looking for are going to be completely different to the kind of spec scripts this producer standing next to me would be looking for. Like, we're different people. There's no list of the kinds of things that the producers are looking for. If what you're asking is what quality level they have to be at, I can tell you that page 1 needs to pull me in. Page 1 needs to be something that at the end of page 1, I know I'm in the hands of a professional writer. I know that this person is skilled enough, or they appear at least on page 1 to be skilled enough that if I invest the time, and keep in mind, time is the #1 enemy, if I invest the time, an hour and a half, 2 hours, to read this whole script, I believe from page 1 that by the end of the screenplay, I will have been through an extraordinary reader experience. If I can't tell that from page 1, I'm going to be suspicious with every page, and I'm going to be looking for hints and signs of, yeah, this isn't going to turn out well, so that I can stop reading this as soon as possible. So the kinds of projects that a producer is going to say yes to, it has to be very tightly written. It has to be written succinctly, formatted right. Yes, there's this whole talk about script formatting. At the end of the day, you could write a script on the back of a napkin, but if it's properly formatted, if it's written well, if it's written in a tight, crisp reading style, then I know that I'm in for a good experience. And that's what you want me to think on page 1. And then when I flip to page 2 and page 3, and it pulls me right in, and it's something that I just want to keep reading and reading and reading until you take me on this journey along the way, and I cry at the sad parts and I laugh at the funny parts, and I'm tense and freaked out. My heart's pumping at those tense moments. That's what we want the screenplay to be. Whatever the genre, whatever if it's a comedy, it should be laugh out loud funny. If it's a horror film, it should be shocking and scary and genuinely terrifying, and I should be creeped out at my desk reading it. If it's a sci-fi, it has to engage my intellect in whatever way that type of sci-fi project would. I don't know of a repository for the kinds of spec screenplays that producers are seeking, simply because that's kind of it. I don't know anybody that compiles that. You can look at something like the blacklist for scripts, unproduced screenplays that people within the industry, that readers within the industry have upvoted, basically. So it's this annual thing, blacklist.com. Basically, it's that you have assistants and reps in the industry that are reading the scripts, and basically they vote on which ones they think are the best unproduced screenplays, and then the top ones each year that get the most votes are sort of representative of great storytelling, screenwriting. But often they're unproduced because it's hard for someone to package this or put this together, or there are maybe some marketing considerations or some business elements to it that make it harder to produce. So even that's not... It's like screenwriting competitions. A script can win a screenwriting competition and still not be something that we could actually go out and produce. So even that is what I'm saying. It's usually those are usually, the blacklist specifically, are usually a good indication of good writing, of good screenwriting style. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're viable or projects, or that they're stuff that people could say yes to. Otherwise, they might already be in production, which is not fair to those films, because just because a script is viable and ready for production doesn't necessarily mean it's going to align with its producer at the right moment at the right time. So great projects can languish for a long time. It's just the nature of alignment, frankly. So how to contact them without an agent? You don't. If you're trying to reach producers and production companies in Hollywood, nobody's going to take anything without an agency, because it's too easy for them to get sued, or for you to then claim later if they happen to be developing something that's similar to what you submitted, which happens all the time, because we have this collective conscious. Lots of ideas are similar to ideas that we've seen or heard elsewhere. At the end of the day, you want to submit. Most of them are going to have some sort of a release form or requirement for you to submit through a rep. You can submit through an entertainment attorney. Entertainment attorney is perfectly acceptable alternative to an agent for a writer. But at the end of the day, if they don't know you and they don't know your writing, why are they going to accept something? Do they know the entertainment producer? It's going to be that would be a similar dynamic to how agencies work. So at the end of the day, there's sort of the hidden question within this is like, how do I know what producers want, and how can I get it to them without the machinery of the industry? And the only way you do that is independent producers who are outside the system. Those are the producers that you would try to reach. And that kind of goes back to my thesis of this whole series, which is, in order to break into that level, the Hollywood, the big studios, all that, we want to come in with power. We want to come in with a track record. You've created something on probably a low budget that has created and generated a lot of buzz, that they then want to see what your next project is. Then they'll take the meetings, and then they'll read your spec script. But to improve your writing level, I'm always gonna suggest going through my system and actually learning the whole friggin' process. But if you want to sort of try to find shortcuts that don't work, just go read scripts online and read the blacklist scripts and get a sense of what a good writing style is all about. And as far as trying to break in, there's reasons why that doesn't happen. Reasons I've covered in earlier episodes of this series, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight and an indication. I want to make sure the Q&A sessions don't go too long, so we're going to leave it at that for today. If you have any follow-up questions, something I didn't quite answer fully or thoroughly or satisfying enough, pop them into the comments below. Please ask questions. You can ask anything about anything. It doesn't have to be just about producers and production companies. It can be about anything within the industry. But take action today. Keep taking action. Keep moving forward. You can do this. Your voice is important. It's special. It's unique. There's no such thing as failure. Take action. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.